Shalom Chaverim. Hello, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here with you. So I travel, I speak, I meet Jewish communities across North America and around the world. And I have to tell you, there is something extraordinary special. There is something specific when I have the opportunity to walk into a room like this one, a room full of people who came not because they had to, not because they were obligated to, but because they chose to be here. Because they wanted to be in this story, in this moment, because the future of Am Yisrael, the Jewish people and the state of Israel, actually keeps us up at night. And not only in times of concern, but with love and care. And that is not nothing. In fact, I would argue that is everything. Tonight is a celebration. And I mean that seriously, not as a social gathering or convention, but as a statement that we make to celebrate in the Jewish tradition. It's not to pretend that difficulty does not exist. It is to insist that in the face of difficulty, that what has been built actually matters. That what we are building matters. That joy, chosen, deliberate, communal joy, is itself an act of resistance and faith. And so tonight I want to talk about where we are actually standing, what we are actually standing upon, the inheritance we have received, the civilization we are a part of, and the extraordinary, wondrous, specific, joyful responsibility of being alive at this moment in our history. I want to start with a question that I find genuinely interesting to me, at least, and I wonder this as a huge fan of our history. How in the world are we still here? Not rhetorically, but historically. By every law of civilizational physics, by every pattern of how peoples and cultures survive or disappear, the Jewish people should not exist. Not in any meaningful sense, at least. Not as a living, arguing, innovating, praying, building civilization people. The pharaohs tried to destroy us. The Babylonians exiled us. The Romans destroyed our temples, scattering us across continents and erased our political sovereignty for 2,000 years. And of course, the Spanish Inquisition, the Cossacks, and then the Shoah, the Holocaust. 6 million of us systematically murdered in the heart of modern Europe. And yet, despite it all, here we are. Here we are in Denver at this wonderful reception, at this celebration of Jewish life, talking about Israel, celebrating Israel, planning its future. That is not normal. That is not what usually happens to peoples who go through what we have gone through. Nations typically disappear when faced with far less. And we are not merely surviving, we are advancing, contributing, building. Am Yisrael, the Jewish people, numbering fewer than 15 million globally, less than 0.2% of humanity, have produced Einstein and Kafka and Salk and Spinoza and Freud. We've built the Middle East's only democracy, having turned barren land into a technological powerhouse that develops water solutions for drought-stricken nations, medical breakthroughs that save lives across all faiths, agricultural innovation that feed people who have never heard of the state of Israel. This is not a story about military might. This is a story about what happens when a people refuses to die, refuses to let ideas die. Am Yisrael, the Jewish people, represent something unprecedented in human history. Not because we are special in some abstract, self-congratulatory sort of way, but because the pattern of our history, the specific, documented, remarkable pattern of exile, return, destruction, rebuilding, persecution, flourishing, this pattern is the proof of something. It is evidence of a civilizational commitment so deep and portable, so alive, that it cannot be killed by geography or power or even time. The Babylonians exiled us in 586 before the Common Era. We could have dissolved, but we didn't. We sat by the rivers of Babylon and we wrote and we cried and we remembered Zion and we preserved and we evolved a Judaism that could exist without a temple, without a land, without a king. We turned exile into innovation. We made portability into a theology. The Romans who destroyed the Second Temple in 70 of the Common Era, well, we could have disappeared then too. Our way of life, our culture. But we didn't. And the rabbis of blessed memory at the time in Yavneh, they sat down and they said, okay, we will rebuild not in stone but in text. We will not sacrifice, but we will study, we will pray. And they produced the commentaries and the Mishnah and the Talmud and the entire architecture of Jewish life that has carried us through 2,000 years of exile. And after the Shoah, the most systematic attempt at human annihilation recorded in history. We rose from the ashes and we came home. And look what we built. In 1948, that same generation who stared death in the eye and said no, declared the state. Not because we were naive enough to think that it would be easy, because it wasn't, and it still isn't. But because we are Jewish enough to know that the alternative was unacceptable. This is the inheritance that we all stand upon tonight. Now I want to say something about these three words that every person in this room, I'm sure, has said, has sung, has danced to, has probably shouted out at a rally or a concert or a Shabbat table, especially in the last 2 years. Am Yisrael Chai. The people of Israel lives. These three words have been everywhere since October 7th. On signs, on t-shirts, on social media, shouted at rallies across the world. And I don't want to minimize that. I don't want to be cynical about it for a single moment, because there is real power in people finding its voice, finding its spine, finding the words to say, we are here and we refuse to disappear. But I want to go deeper than that slogan, because Am Yisrael Chai is not a declaration of survival. It is a description of a way of being in this world. Chai, the word Chai, and many of you have this around your necklace. We wear it around our necks. We say l'chaim at every table, but do we know what it actually means? Not just lives in the static sense, not exists, technically present. Chai means alive in the active, dynamic, growing, generative sense. A tree is chai when it puts out new branches. A river is chai when it is moving. A people is chai when it is not merely enduring, but producing, creating, arguing, building, debating, teaching, dreaming. The miracle of Jewish persistence is not that we survived. Lots of things survive. Rocks survive. Ruins survive. The miracle is that we kept being alive in the fullest sense of that word, chai, through every attempt to make us merely exist. At JNF USA, Jewish National Fund has been one of the primary institutional expressions of that aliveness, that chayness, for 125 years. Think about what JNF has actually done. Having planted over 250 million trees in a land that was largely deforested. It has built reservoirs and water infrastructure, turning the desert into farmland, building parks and community spaces, turning schools and physical infrastructure of a life or towards a life worth living. It has taken the Jewish impulse, the ancient, persistent, almost irrational impulse to build for a future that you may not live to see, and made it concrete, literally concrete in the ground, in the land. That is Am Yisrael Chai. That is Am Yisrael Chai as a way of life, not a feeling, but a practice. Every tree planted was a vote for the future. Every reservoir built was an act of faith before ever seeing the harvest come to fruition. And now, right now, at this very moment, JNF is rebuilding communities in the south of Israel that the world declared finished. Communities evacuated after October 7th. Families who left everything and had been waiting for months to come home. JNF is not waiting for the situation to be perfect before building. JNF is building as a declaration that the situation will improve, that these families will come home, and that the future is very real. That is the specific practice, boots on the ground version of Yisrael Chai. And every person in this room, all of you here, who has supported this work, who has given, who has advocated, who has come tonight, is part of it. You're not a donor. You are a builder. And that's what this is all about. And so I want to give us just a few reasons for some joy during these challenging times. Not manufactured reasons, not inspirational, posterized sort of reasons, but actual documented reasons, real reasons for genuine, grounded, earned joy. Israel today produces more scientific papers per capita than any other nation on earth. In a country that has been in a state of conflict for its entire existence, where every young person serves in the military, where the entire society mobilized overnight on October 7th, and I know I was there, I lived there. The universities stayed open, the labs kept running, the researchers kept publishing, because the Jewish commitment to education and innovation is not a fair weather commitment, it is baked into who we are. The population of Israel is growing. The Jewish birth rate, both in Israel and in the engaged diaspora communities, is strong. The next generation of Jewish leadership in this room, and you heard before, in this city, here in Denver, and across North America, is more connected, more educated about Israel, more committed to Jewish identity than the doomsayers predicted. October 7th didn't break the next generation. It woke them up. The communities being rebuilt in the South are not being rebuilt to what they were. They are being rebuilt to what they should have been, with better infrastructure, with more community space, with intentional design for resilience. The people who are choosing to go back are not going back despite what happened. They are going back because of what they believe, that this land is theirs, that this future is theirs, and that Yisrael Chai means something they are willing to plant their lives in. And Israel's water technology developed in that same desert where Avraham Avinu, Abraham, the patriarch, dug his wells, is now deployed in over 40 countries. Israeli agricultural innovations feed people on 6 continents. The desalination systems that turned a water-scarce nation into a water-exporting one are now being adopted for drought-stricken regions across Africa and Asia. A nation of 15 million people is feeding and hydrating the world. The desert is not just blooming. It is teaching the world how to bloom. That is the forest. That is the big picture. That is what Am Yisrael has built and what it is a part of and what you are all a part of. That is what we continue to be a part of. And as we sit here tonight under those trees, under that big picture, that forest, not metaphorically, the forest of Israel that JNF planted, the ones that were seeded by donations of previous generations, by the pennies collected in the little blue boxes, the pushke, in Jewish homes across America, by the Zionists who came before us and decided the future was worth investing in before they could see it. Those trees are real. They are standing. And they have been there for decades, giving shade and oxygen and beauty to a land that was barren when our grandparents gave to plant them. We are the generation that got to live and appreciate and enjoy those trees. And we are the generation that gets to plant the next ones. That is what it means to be a member of Am Yisrael, Ledor Vador, from generation to generation. Am Yisrael Chai is not a slogan about the past. It is a commitment about the future. It is a declaration that the aliveness, the chayness of this people, this generative, creating, building, dreaming aliveness will continue. That is our job. Not because history guarantees it, because it doesn't. History guarantees nothing. But because we choose it, we have choice. We choose to be active participants, agents in manifesting our destiny. Because we show up, because we build, because we come to receptions on a Tuesday evening in June here in Denver, and we say, this story matters to me, I am a part of it. I want my children to inherit it, and I want to help build. The ancestors who came before us did not have that certainty. They had commitment. They did not know that the state would survive its first war, its second, let alone its sixth war. They did not know that the desert would bloom, that the technology would flourish, that the people scattered across the earth would come home. They just decided with that particular Jewish combination of chutzpah and faith, audacity, audacious hope, that the future was worth planting for. And now, my friends, it's our turn. The question is not whether Am Yisrael Chai, it is how Am Yisrael Chai. It is what we build, it is what we leave behind. And for us all to ask ourselves, what kind of ancestors will we be? What will the future say about us at this critical juncture, this historical intersection we stand in Israel and across the Jewish world? And that is the question I leave with us all today. What kind of ancestors will we be? Chaim. Thank you.